Hi, good day all. Namaskar. In our continuation of the recent changes in ISO 27001 2022, uh, we have completed our 3 controls out of the total new 11 control which has been introduced into this revised standard in 2022. And today we are going to cover 2 more new control, how to implement what this control is all about. My name is Mukul Gupta. Let's get started. So the first control which we are going to talk about today is A7.4 physical security monitoring. And this control is separately newly added. And what these controls talk about, let's discuss first what the description is. So this control require you to monitor sensitive area in order to enable only authorized people to access them, only monitor sensitive area first. This is the important part, right? And then only authorized people. This is the important part, right? And this might include your office, production facility, warehouse, other premises, and whatever you feel that is sensitive or critical, important, as a layman term, sensitive, critical, important for your organization. So first thing is what? First thing is that as per your organization context or scope or this organization working, you have to have identify which are the sensitive or critical area first, and then you have to see that you have a proper physical. You may have logical control, that's fine, but you have proper physical control in place so that only authorized people are can access this, but unauthorized people are not able to access this area. So this controls talk about. Now, for example, let's suppose if you have a data center in any IT company, this is a general, the facility which is critical and sensitive. And only authorized people, for example, IT people or security maybe, or operations itself. When I say operation admin, right, maybe authorized, but other general people like development, testers, office staff, or office staff. When I say office staff, in general, other employees beside this IT, security, and information security, and this your admin team, they are not authorized or not allowed to go into data center. So you have to see that you have proper control at data center with respect to the complexity of your environment. So you may have biometric machine, you may have guard also in additional with biometric. If you have this data center very sensitive, you may have some kind of turnstile. There are different possibilities, and you may have physical monitoring, CCTV cameras. So you may have different physical controls to see that CCTV camera is in first go. It's not. It is a deter control, but it is not first go giving you this that people are not authorized or not. But this may you consider physical for the detection purpose, right? But mainly guard, biometric machine, turnstile, which is operable either through guard or the card which are given to the this employees, those who can utilize, those who are authorized to access this open this turnstile. So you can have multi-layer of physical security as well for this as per the sensitivity of your area. Now when I say this IT and this information security and admin, also this is very important that what controls you have. Like IT people can access this uh, data center, right? Can access this data center as and when needed for the operating of this environment. Now security people can also access, but maybe possible you say it is not directly they can access, but they can, IT people can, can give them company and then they can visit if needed. If not needed, security people and admin people are also needed. Admin people sometimes need this access for the cleaning, right? So IT people also can give them, company whenever they are doing this kind of services. So you have to have, see and, jot down that what are the activities for what are the activities and for what this particular department, particular roles are allowed to enter and in what condition. Okay. Now coming to this, once we understood what is this control at high level talk about. Now coming to this technological control, technological requirement. It says that depending on your risk, you might need implement alarm system or video monitoring. You might also decide to implement a non-tech solution, like person observing the areas, for example guard. So that we have already talked, right? So as per your need, organization context and sensitivity of your area, you can have alarm system, you can have CCTV, and also you can have non-technical. So when I say non-technical, guards, you can have also biometric. So biometric, but biometric machine sometime maybe you biometric is logical or technical, but that's fine. So for example, you can have this kind of controls in place. Now coming to this, what kind of what processes the company can have to address this requirement. As per ISO 27001, there is no mandatory requirement to have this documented procedure as of now, but you should define who is in charge of monitoring of sensitive area and what communication channel to use to report an incident. So two element which is very important, that once you have your sensitive area, right, and you identify this is a sensitive area, first is identification, and once you have identified this as a sensitive area, and then this CCTV cameras are being installed, for example, then somebody is monitoring based on this sensitivity and that need, like, so you say it is need to be monitored by 24/7 or in shift, whatever it is, but I think in 24/7 as per the criticality or shift, it is being need to be monitored. So who is authorized, who is responsible to monitor this, right, on day-to-day basis? And once they monitor, are trained? So for example, if goes wrong something goes wrong, right? So what communication channel this particular person who is responsible have to use in this condition? So for example, if you find that something is not happening as per the set procedure or not in general, which is okay, then what communication and what incident response plan he has follow. So first, to who to he has to communicate and all. So this all need to be documented. So you may have incident response plan where this is one of the scenario and can be addressed in your incident management process. Uh, so for example, documentation need, you may include this in your physical security monitoring in the following document as we were talking. So procedure that regulates physical security what is monitor and who is in charge of monitoring. So that we have already discussed. An incident management procedure, how to report and handle a physical security incident, right? So two element, first is uh, your physical security, right, where you can procedure or you can mention that who is responsible and who is in charge of monitoring, right? And then if something identified adverse event happen, then your incident management procedure need to cater that how to report and handle this physical security incident. Okay. Now coming to the training part, I think it is very important that employees are aware of the risk of unauthorized physical entry into sensitive area and train them how to use monitoring technology. So two element, right? Those who are responsible for this 24 into 7 monitoring or other type of monitoring, these people have to have trained on this, that what need to be monitored, and because somehow technology is also involved, how to operate, how to log, how to see the recordings, and how to once you have very important point, once you have very large facility and very huge number of cameras like 100 200, then this is very important that how to monitor effectively those recording or this live recording, whatever it is. And also employees in general should be trained on the aspect that these areas, where you have physical identification that this is an authorized area, this is a very critical and sensitive area where only authorized people are allowed to enter, right? So you may have seen some of the notification or outside data center, switch area, electricity room, and some finance room as well, right? And HR record room as well, where you may have seen that only authorized people are allowed to enter. So people should be trained enough that they should not try to access this critical atmosphere. They should be understanding that what is the sensitivity and the criticality of these areas. Okay. So I think we have talked about this controls quite deeply, and I think we have now some clarity on this control. Now moving to the next control. So the next control is A 8.9, configuration management. Now let's see what this control talk about. These controls require you to manage the whole cycle of security configuration for your technology to ensure a proper level of security and to avoid any unauthorized changes. This include configuration definition, implementation, monitoring, and review. So this control at high level talk about that whatever technology you are using in your organization, this technology system or devices or any networks configuration, whatever the configuration you have, you have to have this process or the system in place to manage the whole life cycle of this configuration management into this technology system network devices, right? So whenever there is a who can access this devices, who can access the devices, for example, right, who is authorized to access the devices first, and once they are authorized to access, what changes as per the rule they can allow to make, right? And Once they are making these changes of, so when we say when changes, configuration changes, right? They are authorized and approved changes, authorized and approved changes based on the criticality, sensitivity, and the type of change, right? So, are they authorized, approved, and what configuration they are taking to make these changes? So, whole life cycle, right? So, identification, right? What is the definition of configuration, and then how, when they are going to implement, right? It is how they are going to implement. Once they are implemented, that how they are going to monitor it for some time, and then the configuration review on regular time, and then update this configuration based on the security need. Okay. Now coming to the technological part, how you can address this technological aspect of this control, technological. So the technology whose configuration need to be managed could include software, hardware, services, and or network. Smaller companies will probably be able to handle configuration management without any additional tool. However, larger companies probably need some software that enforce and define configuration. So this is very important. If we categorize this organization into two areas, small and large. So what it says, let's suppose if you have only 3 switches, you have 15 to 20 people. I think there is no such definition, which we can say small and large, but it is up to the organization. When there are 3 switches, some routers, some 15 to 20 people, where you have 10 to 15 endpoint laptops or desktops. So you may have your manual inventory of these systems, and then manual inventory, right? And you can have your configuration Excel at high level, and configurations settings or file for each of the system, and then you can have manual record, and then you can update manually this configuration to these devices as and when needed, and you can track the recording. But for example, if you have 50 100 switches in the complex environment, large number of switches, routers, firewalls, complex, nutshell, complex and large network, and few thousand of employees, endpoint, where you have this where it is very hard to manually monitor and push configuration in all together in all machines, so it is very cumbersome process. So you may require a software which is there, and you can track the inventory first, and then categorize which are critical, and then also can push configuration from that central application to these devices, right? So for example, live example, so for real example, right, in switches and network cases. So for example, you have one make of OEM, right? So they have their master controller uh, where authorized admin have access, and your all 100 or 500 or multi, whatever the count you have for your other network devices like switches, for example, right, other switches. Whenever there is a need, you can just go to this controller and select the need to change in particular switches, and you can push this setting from the central master controller, and whenever there is a need, you can see what the current configuration you have. on these devices, right? There are a lot of other infrastructure monitoring tool like Chef, Puppet, other tools are also available, which you can see, and uh, based on the complexity of your organization, you can see that what can fit as per your organization context. Okay. Now coming to this part of the process, what process what process somebody at organization level need. So you should set up a process for proposing, reviewing and approving security configuration, as well as processes for managing and monitoring the configuration. So so let's understand this, right? So if you are a small company, you can document the configuration rules in your security operating procedures, and large company may have separate procedure that define the configuration process, and you will usually have separate specification that define security configuration for each of your system in order to avoid frequent update of the document mentioned in the previous paragraph, right? Further, all changes to configuration need to be logged to enable an audit trail. That is very important, right? So at process level, what you can have, you can have as per, so first of all, there is no mandatory requirement as per ISO. In ISO, only this control have mandatory document requirement as per ISO 27001, right? So you have to have this procedure in place, right? So this is very important. Out of 11 new control which has been introduced, these controls, this configuration A 8.9 required a documented procedure, right? So based on the your organization size and the complexity context, right, complexity, you can see that you can have process where you can set that process for uh, how changes are being proposed, right, what approval system take place, then testing of these changes, right, then how these are going to be implemented, how it going to be, who is authorized to do this kind of changes. Now once you do these changes, this in process, then you have to have audit mechanism, log log enablement, that what logs need to be more capture and then record, right, for the later audits. So audit trail, so this all need to be defined in your process, right? So you can have separate process. So I think if organization don't have as of now current process, they can have separate process where you can define this all requirement. And also one of the element is that you may have like switch, right, you may have your HR tool, that is maybe possible SaaS based tool, right? For example, you may have your Jira tool, for example. So Jira is one of the tool which is being used in software, right, for in general, for project management, support life cycle, support projects, right, where you can have all the tasks log. So what I'm saying, trying to say that you have to have, based on the requirement and the complexity and the type of data this application or this system contain, either switch or HR tool, HR application, Jira or your routers, you may have a separate configuration document manually, right, or also when you have document and also into or you into digital way, right? So you can have process in general with the steps captured, and then you can have a separate security configuration document associated with this process. So whenever somebody follow the process, what security configuration need to be implied, they can refer to those security configuration changes, right? So there are a lot of free and lot of good sites available. You can go to CIS benchmark or other configuration. You can refer online, Google that such configurations for this system, then you can see that one of the example which I'm giving, CIS benchmark, right? So you can go those website and you can identify the basic minimum requirement set by this CIS benchmark for different system, Windows, Linux, iOS, Mac, right? And then you can see based on your organization context what are the requirement which you need to implement as a configuration for your system. Okay. So this is all about for this control, that is 8.9 configuration management, and this both controls which we have talked about today, it is part of the category of technology control. Okay. So this is all. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have some clarity about this two controls which we have talked today, and we'll continue in this series. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time.